basically I'm just going to talk here about the evolution of the lures that I use really. I started off, when I first started fishing in the sea, I just used common old Tobies, and they were fine. You know, you'll pick up Kawai, you'll pick up Trevally, you'll pick up all sorts of things on them. They're cheap and they're readily available. The next thing that I moved to after that was this little Yozuri lure called an El Minnow. Notice the size of all of these. They're only about 2.5 inches long, and you'll be surprised just how big a fish will hit a small lure. So just to interrupt. So the phone that's on the table there is actually an iPhone 4?
It's an iPhone.
Yep, so there's your iPhone 4. This is a Yozuri El Minnow. It's a very small minnow. The downside of using a lure like that is that it limits your casting distance. So when I moved to those, originally I was casting quite a long way with the metal lures, as you'd expect. Then I went to the El Minnow and I was very successful with that, but there was a limit to how far I could cast it. So I thought, well, what I really need to do next is find something else that is going to cast distance, but it's going to also be as effective as the El Minnow was. And then I went looking and I found these Yozuri 3D Vibes, which is now unfortunately discontinued. They were discontinued about 2008, but they're very effective bibless lure. You can cast them a long way, beautiful sheen, goes into the water, and very often is within seconds of it hitting the water you'll hook up on something, because as it flutters through the water column it looks so much like an injured and dying fish that they just can't resist it, so it gets nailed very quickly. When that got discontinued I had to go looking for something else. So in America I found these things here called Binsky blades, which are one of the earlier blades that came into the market. There's a lot of others that are available now. One of the best things about a Binsky blade in terms of what I can see is a couple of things. Massive amount of chrome, so you get wicked flash under the water. You can see these things 20-30 feet away, and you can vary by adjusting where the clip is. You can adjust. There's 4 settings, so you can adjust the level of cadence or vibration that you get from the lure itself, which is a really useful feature. Sometimes you can fish aren't taking it when you've got it in, say, the second hole, so then you can experiment and take it out to the fourth or into the first and see if it has any effect on success. So that's a very useful feature. It's very heavily weighted on the front, so they ride in the water as they're going along. They're going head down, tail up, and I tend to rip them, so they vibrate, and then I pause, and then I rip it and pause. And if it hits an obstruction, then generally, because you're towing halfway up the back, you can flip the lure over the obstruction and carry on fishing again without it burying in there. So these are very, very cheap really to import from America. So that's kind of the journey that I've gone to. At the moment I'm always looking for new lures to add into this sort of area, and at the moment I'm looking for more bibless lures, probably from Japan, that have a profile and shape and size very similar to this one, because I actually believe that this is an incredible lure. I've caught everything from Kawai to snapper to trevally to stargazers to parori on this particular lure, so they're incredibly effective.
Those lures, you've got 4 lures there. Are they all sinking, or is the suspending lures there? Are there?
That's a good question, Paul. Those 2 sink. This one sinks. This one is a sinker, but a slow sinker. And yes, I do use suspending lures and shallow lures. It just depends really on the water depth as to what I'm going to do when I go into. They'd be bib lures, of course, when you're doing the suspending thing. So you would be picking them in to replace this one, and if the water's very shallow, then you can easily use a floating lure that's got a depth that dives to say 2 metres or something like that, you can use that no trouble at all. So it's about matching the lure that you have to the depth of water that you're fishing.
Okay. Out of the 4 lures that you've got there, if you were to choose one that works for you, obviously the 2 down the bottom there, the ones that you use predominantly at the moment, would be your two go-to lures?
Yep. I would probably, at the moment, I sort of vacillate between the 2 of those. I think this would be the lure that I'd probably go to most of the time, just because I've caught a wider variety of species on it. The Binsky blades are absolutely deadly on things like kahawai, and if there's any around and you're fishing in murky water, then I'd almost certainly go for that, and you can cast it an absolute mile. So I'd pretty much use this one preferentially, and then that would be my second go-to lure.